Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're tackling a part of the Idaho 4 case that's got so many of you curious. Why was the house where 4 University of Idaho students were tragically murdered torn down before Bryan Kohberger's trial? Was it really about helping the town heal, or did they destroy a key piece of evidence? In my last videos, we covered this case, and now we're diving into what the victims' families, like Kaylee Goncalves' parents, said, what the University of Idaho claimed, and what legal experts are warning about. Plus, we'll look at some of the theories out there, like was this a cover-up to help Kohberger? Don't worry, I'll point out what's just speculation. So, stick around as we figure out, was demolishing this house the right call, or a massive mistake? Let's jump in. Alright, so why did the University of Idaho decide to tear down the house at 1122 King Road, where Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan were killed? According to the university, it was all about helping the town heal. They got the house donated after the murders, and let's be real, it was a tough site. Boarded up, fenced off, guarded 24/7, it was like a constant reminder of the tragedy for students and everyone in Moscow. University President Scott Green said it was a grim reminder of the heinous act, and that tearing it down would help students living nearby feel safer, especially before the new semester kicked off. I read that in a CBS News report, by the way. They even planned to turn the lot into a memorial garden for the victims, which sounds like a beautiful idea, right? The demolition happened fast, December 28th, 2023, gone in under 2 hours with an excavator. The university made sure both the prosecution and defense got in there first to take photos and measurements, and the FBI used 3D imaging to save a digital version of the house for the trial. So, their stance is we've got the evidence covered, and this is about giving the community some peace. But here's the thing. Does that make sense to you? Could a digital model really replace the actual crime scene? We'll get into what the victims' families thought about this in a sec. And trust me, they weren't on board. Alright guys, now let's talk about what the victims' families had to say about the University of Idaho tearing down the King Road house. This part hits hard because it's not just about evidence. It's about the pain of losing Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, and the family's desperate fight to make sure justice isn't compromised. The families of Kaylee and Xana, through their attorney Shannon Gray, were furious about the demolition. They saw that house as a critical piece of evidence in Bryan Kohberger's trial. In a statement to Fox News, Gray said, and I'm quoting here, "Isn't it better to have the King Road house and not need it than need the house and not have it?" Think about that for a second. They're saying, why risk it? Why tear down the actual crime scene before the trial even starts? Here's why they were so upset. Both the prosecution and Kohberger's defense teams went to the house in December 2023, just weeks before it was demolished on December 28th. They were taking photos, measurements, all that stuff because the house's layout, where the rooms were, how close things were, how someone could move through it, was still important to the case. The Goncalves family pointed out that no trial date was even set at the time, so why rush to destroy it? They felt completely ignored. Shannon Gray put it in a way that really stuck with me. He said it was like screaming into a void. Nobody is listening, and everyone tells you how sorry they are for the decision, but the family's opinion isn't a priority. Can you imagine how that must feel? Your child's murder scene is gone, and you're told it's for the community's healing, but you're begging them to keep it for justice. Now, here's where it gets even more complicated. Not all the families felt the same way. Ethan Chapin's family actually supported the demolition. They believed taking the house down would help the University of Idaho community, including their other kids who go to school there, move forward. They didn't want students walking by that boarded-up house every day, reliving the trauma. It's heartbreaking to think about this split. Kaylee and Xana's families fighting to keep the house, while Ethan's family saw its removal as a way to protect their kids and the town. It shows how messy and painful this decision was. There's no right or wrong here, just different ways of dealing with grief. But the Goncalves and Kernodle families weren't just speaking from emotion. They had a point about the evidence. They argued the house could help jurors understand the crime in a way photos or 3D models just can't. Picture this. If you're a juror, wouldn't you want to walk through the actual place where it all happened? See how small the rooms were, how close the doors were, how someone could have gotten in or out. That's what they were fighting for. They worried that tearing it down could give Kohberger's defense an edge, making it harder for prosecutors to paint a clear picture of the crime. And they weren't alone in thinking that. We'll get to what legal experts said later, and trust me, they had some strong opinions. Now, I know some of you are wondering if there's more to this, like was the university hiding something by demolishing it so fast? I've seen those questions out there, and we'll talk about those theories in a bit. But let me be clear, there's no hard proof of any cover-up or shady motives. What we do know is the families felt their voices weren't heard, and that's a big deal. So what do you think? Were Kaylee and Xana's families right to push back, or did Ethan's family have a point about moving on? Let me know in the comments, because this one's tough. Next up, we're going to look at what legal experts said about how this demolition could actually affect Kohberger's trial. Okay, guys, we've talked about why the University of Idaho tore down the King Road house and how the victims' families, especially Kaylee and Xana's, fought to keep it standing. But what do the legal experts think? Could demolishing the house actually change the outcome of Bryan Kohberger's trial? This is where things get really interesting, because some pros are saying this move might give Kohberger's defense a leg up, while others think the prosecution's got it covered. Let's break it down. First off, why does the house even matter for the trial? The house at 1122 King Road wasn't just a crime scene. It's where Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan were killed on November 13th, 2022. The layout, the size of the rooms, how close everything was, even the way sound carried. Those details could help jurors piece together what happened that night. Like, how did Kohberger allegedly move through the house? Could someone have heard something? Those are the kinds of questions a jury might need answered by seeing the actual place. But now that the house is gone, demolished on December 28th, 2023, jurors will have to rely on photos, videos, and a 3D model the FBI made. And that's where the experts start raising red flags. Point one attorney, Edwina Elcox. She's a Boise lawyer who worked on the Lori Vallow case. Told the Idaho Statesman something that really stuck out. She said, video and pictures can help, but may not accurately depict the scene in the way an in-person visit can do. Think about that. If you're a juror, walking through the actual house could make you feel the claustrophobia of those tight hallways or see how close the bedrooms were. That's stuff you can't fully get from a screen. Elcox's point is that the house was a one-of-a-kind piece of evidence, and tearing it down before the trial, set for August 11th, 2025, might make it harder for prosecutors to tell a clear story. Then there's Jennifer Coffindaffer, a former FBI agent who's been all over this case. She straight up said the demolition could be a huge advantage for Kohberger's defense. Why? Because without the physical house, the defense can argue that jurors are missing the full picture. Maybe they'll say the prosecution's 3D model isn't accurate, or that photos don't show the real distances between rooms. Coffindaffer thinks this could plant seeds of doubt, especially since Kohberger's team is already pushing hard on things like the DNA evidence. They've even claimed it might have been planted, though there's no proof of that. Just so we're clear. Another expert, Mark Nijame, a defense attorney not tied to this case, doubled down on this. He told CBS News that jurors visiting a crime scene is a game changer because it makes the crime feel real. Without the house, prosecutors are stuck relying on memories of the scene, which isn't the same. He's worried the defense could use this to poke holes in the prosecution's case, like saying, how can you be sure what happened if you can't even see the actual place? That's a big deal when you're trying to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. But here's the flip side. Loudoun County Prosecutor Bill Thompson, who's leading the case against Kohberger, didn't fight the demolition. He told the court the house had changed so much since the murders. Think cleaned up blood, boarded up windows, that it wouldn't even be useful for jurors to visit. Under Idaho law, he said, a jury visit wasn't going to happen anyway. Plus, he's confident in the evidence they've got. DNA on a knife sheath, cell phone data showing Kohberger's phone near the house multiple times, and surveillance footage of a white Hyundai Elantra like is circling the area. Thompson's basically saying, we don't need the house. We've got enough to nail this. The judge, Stephen Hippler, backed him up, denying a defense motion to throw out evidence over the demolition. He said both sides had plenty of time to document the house before it came down. Still, not everyone's buying that. Some experts argue the prosecution's confidence might be a mistake. Elcox, for example, said she'd never destroy a crime scene until the trial's done or the defendant pleads guilty. Why? Because you never know what might come up. What if a witness testifies about hearing something in a house, and the jury needs to understand how sound travels? Or what if the defense questions how fast someone could have escaped? Those are things you can only really get by standing in the actual space. And with the trial still months away, the families and these experts are worried the demolition was way too soon. Now, I know some of you are thinking, wait, does this mean the prosecution's case is weaker now? Or maybe you're wondering if the defense pushed for the demolition to help Kohberger. I've seen those ideas floating around online, and we'll get to those theories later. But let me be straight. There's no evidence the defense had anything to do with the university's decision. That's just speculation. What we do know is that experts like Elcox, Coffin-Daffer, and Nojame are raising legit concerns about how this could play out in court. So what's your take? Does the prosecution have enough without the house? Or did the demolition just make things harder for justice? Hit the comments with your thoughts, because this one's got me thinking. Next, we're going to look at what people like you are saying about this. Those theories about why the house really came down. All right, guys, let's break down what people are saying, what's fact versus speculation, and weigh both sides to figure out what this all means for justice. Stick with me. This one's heavy. First, let's talk about what you're all thinking. I've seen it all over X and in discussions online. A lot of you are wondering if the demolition was some kind of cover-up. Like, did the university tear down the house to hide mistakes from the investigation? Maybe the police missed something at the crime scene, or there's something about the house they didn't want jurors to see. Some folks point to the tort claims filed by the Goncalves and Mogen families, which basically say the university didn't do enough to keep the students safe. I read about that in a dailymail.com article where locals were weighing in. The idea is maybe the university wanted to wipe the slate clean to avoid more legal trouble. But let's be real clear. There's no hard proof of any cover-up. It's just a theory people are throwing out there because the demolition happened so fast. December 28th, 2023, way before Kohberger's trial was set for August 2025, that another big question you're asking is whether tearing down the house helps Kohberger's defense. This one's huge because, like we talked about, the house was the crime scene. Its layout, how tight the hallways were, how close the bedrooms were, could help jurors picture what happened that night in November 2022. Without it, they're stuck with photos and a 3D model the FBI made. Some of you think that could create reasonable doubt, especially since Kohberger's team is already pushing back on the DNA evidence, even claiming it might have been planted, though again, no proof of that. I saw a post on X from someone called Low Flying Donut pointing out that Kohberger's lawyers tried to get evidence tossed because of the demolition, saying it hurt their case too. The judge, Stephen Hippler, shut that down, saying both sides had time to document the house. Still, the idea that this could give Kohberger an edge is something you're all buzzing about. But let me say it again. There's no evidence the university demolished it to help Kohberger. That's just speculation. Locals in Moscow, Idaho, have their own take, and it shows how much this case has hit the community. The house was boarded up, fenced off, with guards and cameras 24/7, a constant reminder of the tragedy. Lily Topping, a Moscow resident, told Newsweek that when the house came down, it lifted this presence of sadness from the neighborhood. She felt like the town could finally breathe. But not everyone agreed. Another local, Linda Moser, told DailyMail.com she understood, wanted to move on, but thought jurors should have seen the house to get the full picture of the crime. It's a split that shows how tough this was. Some locals wanted closure, others felt it was too soon. And that question keeps coming up. Why not wait until after the trial? The fact that the university moved so fast before a trial date was even set has a lot of you raising your eyebrows, and I get why. It feels rushed when justice for 4 students is on the line. So, let's put it all together and ask, was demolishing the house the right call? On one side, the University of Idaho and Ethan Chapin's family had a point. They said keeping that house standing was like a dark cloud over Moscow. Students had to walk by it every day, reliving the trauma, and the university called it a logistics nightmare to maintain guards, fences, media, YouTubers showing up. President Scott Green said it was a grim reminder of the heinous act, and tearing it down was about helping the community heal, especially for students, including Ethan's siblings who go to UI. They even planned to build a memorial garden on the lot, designed by students, to honor Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan. Plus, the prosecution, led by Bill Thompson, didn't fight the demolition. They're confident in their evidence. DNA on a knife sheath, Kohberger's cell phone pinging near the house 23 times, surveillance of a white Hyundai, Elantra like his. Thompson said the house had changed so much, cleaned up blood, boarded windows, that jurors wouldn't have visited it anyway under Idaho law. The FBI's 3D model and photos, they argue, are enough. But on the other side, the Goncalves and Kernodle families were begging to keep the house. Their attorney, Shannon Gray, said it was like screaming into a void. Nobody listened. They called the house a critical piece of evidence, especially since both legal teams were still measuring it in December 2023. They worry jurors need to see the real space to understand things like how sound carried or how someone moved through the house. Legal experts back them up. Edwina Elcox, a Boise attorney, said videos can't replace an in-person visit. Jennifer Coffin-Daffer, a former FBI agent, called it a huge advantage for Kohberger's defense because jurors can't feel the scene's layout. Mark Najame, another attorney, said a physical crime scene is a game-changer for juries. They all think the demolition could make it harder for prosecutors to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, especially with the trial still months away. The family's biggest fear? That tearing it down too soon could tip the scales toward Kohberger. So what's the answer? It's messy. The university wanted to help a grieving town, and some locals, like Lily, felt relief when the house was gone. Ethan's family agreed, thinking of their kids and the community. But Kaylee and Xana's families, along with experts, are saying this could hurt the fight for justice. There's no evidence of a cover-up or intentional sabotage, but the timing, before the trial was even set, feels off to a lot of people. It's like choosing between healing a community and making sure every piece of evidence is there for a fair trial. What do you think? Was it worth tearing down the house to help Moscow move on? Or should they have waited to make sure Kohberger faces the strongest case possible? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear what you're thinking. Before I go, if you're as hooked on this case as I am, hit that like button. It helps the channel a ton. And if you haven't already, subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss my next video. What's your take on the demolition? Was it a mistake or the right call for Moscow? Comment below, and I'll see you in the next one.